You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
Who wants their own personal Jesus? Well, it's just about here. I'm talking about an AI Jesus. You can tell all your thoughts, all your concerns, make all your prayers too. I'm not joking. I'm being serious. Researchers and religious leaders yesterday released findings from a 2-month experiment through art in a Catholic chapel in Switzerland, where an avatar of Jesus on a computer screen, I'm thinking like Max Headroom, tucked into a confessional, took questions by visitors on faith, morality, and modern day problems, and then responded based on scripture. The idea, said the chapel's theological assistant, was to recognize the growing importance of artificial intelligence in human lives, even when it comes to religion, and explore the limits of human trust in a machine. I don't know how to feel about this. Personally, I think there's something obviously wrong when you're having a non-human try to interpret the human experience, and then you try to relate it to faith when a machine obviously has no faith, and as far as we know, doesn't have a soul, doesn't have any type of real personhood. I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, it's one thing to have AI to help you get to, your party faster via Google Maps. And it's another thing if you want to ask Chat GPT how to, better bake a loaf of bread or something like that, or, what's a better stock trading strategy. But when you're asking questions about morality, faith, from something that couldn't possibly have any type of moral foundation, couldn't possibly have any sense of humanity, and is basically reciting from rote scripture which has been input but can't be internalized. I don't know the value in that. I mean, that just sounds like a fortune cookie, basically.
There can't be value in this. There can't be any value, any spiritual connection, any religious connection to something that is AI. That's the opposite of what faith and religion and all of that entails. It's
something. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you're using AI to look up a certain scripture in the Bible, that's fine. But to pastor to you, to help answer your questions that you're asking of it about faith from a computer, from a robot, this is end times, man.
How can I have faith, little f, in a machine that we created, asking the questions about our own creation? How does that work? How is it that we've created something that is going to then supplant actual people who are reading the Word of God and interpreting it, and then helping pastor and shepherd and guide people? And I think this is a very appropriate discussion to have as we move into this particular Christmas season, or even if you happen to be Jewish and moving into Hanukkah season. We have questions about faith and where we belong in this universe. I think maybe bastardization is too strong a word, but this isn't in any way attractive to me at all.
That's not too strong. That's not too strong. This seeks to undo a millennia of teachings. This is when mankind jumps the shark.
Yeah, and we've seen variations of this. I know they have online therapists, which are bots. I know you can get on most websites and they have chat bots to kind of maneuver you through whatever you need to do with that particular company. And I see this as that on steroids, where I can ask religious questions or questions about the story of Job, or the story of Ruth, or how should I look at the story of Damien and Pythias, or David and Jonathan and friendship. No, it's basically internalizing all the scripture and then through algorithms responding to any number of questions which have been pre-programmed that it can learn in machine learning terms. I just don't know if it has any value given what actual human interaction is required when it's required. You know?
Now, and see, this is where I side with Mark when I take a stand against the robotic overlords, because I look at this as generations down the line, say, learning about, say, history or religion or anything like that from an AI program that is controlled or created by people. How does that then, actualize or give people a real understanding of any of this if it's coming from a computer that's been programmed?
Yeah. And a computer cannot experience the world in which we live. In other words, the teachings which were applicable back in 1945 for that world, it's not the same world that we live in right now. And you can't tell me that the machine, just because it has had information input, that it can understand our world in the way that we understand and interface with the world.
A computer can spit information back at you, but it has no wisdom.
That's a better way to put it. Yeah. It can learn, but it can't be wise. And when you're talking about issues of faith, it has to do with wisdom, not just content in a book. And I think it cheapens the whole idea of faith, where we can just pre-program certain answers because it can read all the books of the Bible. It can have all the sermonic interpretations of the greatest preachers and pastors over the years, and then just spit it back out with no real connection with the person who is asking the question of, why did Job go through all that suffering? What was it about his experience that helped people in the years afterwards reading his story? Now I'm quite sure the AI can come up with an answer. And I don't want to get into exegesis and all that kind of stuff. It can come up with an answer, but it's not coming up with an answer which is suited for that person in that moment and in their journey. And also, there should be a relationship. It's not like you just go to confession if you happen to be a Catholic, or you go to church and that's it. No, you develop a relationship, a one-to-one relationship, not only with your Lord and Savior, but also with your pastor, with preacher, with their anyone who's head of the clergy, your priest. You can't do that with an AI. You just can't.
If you're looking for meaning in your life, it's not going to come from a computer, which at the best can behave like an index that you can thumb through.
And we use that as a lead into this next story. When we come back on the other side of the break, we're going to talk about how an ex-Google CEO warns that the quote-unquote perfect AI girlfriends could spell trouble. Because we spend more and more time on the computer, on our phones, looking to connect. And people are going to start finding actual AI boyfriends and girlfriends in the near future. Yes, Twala, you're right. We're going to hell in a handbasket.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
Well, it's Later with Mo Kelly on KFI AM 640.
Live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. Last segment, we were broaching the idea of having an AI Jesus, and that presumes then you would have a spiritual relationship with an AI, and that AI would give you advice or some sort of personal enhancement in your life where you would feel more fulfilled. But it doesn't have to be just spiritual fulfillment. Eric Schmidt, Google's former CEO, recently shared his concerns about young men creating AI romantic partners. And he said that he believes AI dating will actually increase loneliness. It's not something that's in the future. It's already here. Young men especially are people who are using these AI relationship apps. And there's a companion app called Replika, Replika. And it says that most of the app users are 35 and older men. But Eric Schmidt believes that young men are particularly vulnerable because, well, he said basically they're not as educated as women on average. We're not as smart as women. And that's a true story. That's a true story. A 2024 Pew Research study found U.S. women outpaced men in college completion. Schmidt also said that in extreme cases, younger men can turn to the online world for enjoyment and sustenance, but also because of the social media algorithms, they find like-minded people who ultimately radicalize them. Close quote. What was it? Oh, it was the Bruce Willis movie, Surrogates, and how people were basically using physical avatars to interact with the world, like the perfect version of themselves. They didn't actually meet anyone. You just had avatars, physical, like robot avatars who would live in the world and interact with other avatars. And I remember thinking like, yeah, I could see that happening. We are slowly approaching that point where we don't actually interact and interface and connect with each other. We're just social media profiles, we're avatars, and that's about it. Or people will swipe left and swipe right, but not looking for real connection. I don't know what that world is like, if only because I got married in 2016, and at least from a dating standpoint, I don't know what, Tinder is like. I don't know what that world is like. I don't know what guy who's 24 years old, how he goes out to meet someone in an app sense.
Man, it's real tricky. I mean, it's very, very tricky because even when you're on these dating apps, so many of the profiles appear to be AI created, AI generated. Half these apps or half these people that you see in these apps, they don't even look real. A lot of the interactions you may have seem computer generated. And it's always risky. And I think it's risky for women. It's risky for men. It's risky for everyone, even going out on these dates. I have seen recently in different reports where there are guys who are thinking that they're going to meet some young lady and they end up getting to a spot and just getting jumped and robbed.
Yeah.
And it's just a setup. And I'm just like, see, this is how it happens, because they thought they met some hot lady who was saying all the right things on social media. He's busy giving up all his information. He got robbed when he got to the date.
And I can see how it's attractive, or you can have these online relationships with 6 or 7 different people. And I say people in air quotes because you really never know who you're interacting with. And it could be a way to pass time. It can be in some way fulfilling, but I don't know if it's actually fulfilling the need of connection or relationship. And going back to the story, if you're a younger person or in your formative years as an adolescent, it could probably be a barrier for you having normal, what I would call normal relationships with actual people. There's something I have noticed as someone who's not a part of this Gen Z generation. I find a lot of the Gen Z generation don't know how to look me in the eye when you're talking to them, don't know general etiquette or how you greet someone or how to just talk to someone. And I'm not talking about dating. I'm just talking about just going through life. And I don't know, Twala, you could probably tell me better. Your son is of age 18 now and he's dating. I don't know how they actually meet someone. My sons, they would just exchange Instagrams. They wouldn't even exchange phone numbers. They just say, let me get your ID, so they could message and, see pics of one another. But, they'll sit in a room for hours and just be on their phones. I don't get it.
And it's a lot like that. The whole dating idea seems to be so secondary. Just like my son, he started working, and now that he's working, he's excited about the idea of being at work because he's around people. He's like, man, I had gotten into such a rut of being at home and being on the phone and being online talking to people. He said, I forgot how fun it is and how good it is to be out and interacting with people. But it's funny because even on our way to Thanksgiving dinner last night, it's like my daughter from the back seat is like, remember, put your phone in your pocket. We are not there to be on our phones. We are there to interact with people. And this, one of those out of the mouth from babes thing, because it's like, yeah, I keep forgetting, like, he will have his phone with him at all times. And you see him and his friends together. They're still all on their phones.
Yeah.
It's him and his homeboys. They're
in each
on
other's
their
presence.
phone, in their presence. Yeah. So I'm like, it's such a weird thing. I think about generations to come. If AI, and there was a tragic story about a young man a couple of weeks ago that committed suicide when an AI relationship went left. And I think about what this Google exec is alluding to is how these AI relationships, they stand the chance to really, really ruin a lot of young men's lives, young women too, who get caught up into these relationships that aren't real. And when they can't fulfill them in real life, is when they have these very tragic results.
Well, he was explicit. He said it actually may increase loneliness. And then also there was another word that he used as far as being radicalized, where they will develop these views, these disproportionate views of what reality is out of sync and out of whack with what reality is, and their expectations of what should come from life. Well, they have this, I'll say a family member of mine, I don't want to be specific, but he was struggling with some internal self-worth issues. But he was judging other people on what they were putting up on Instagram. It's like, well, this person has this and that person has that, and I don't have any of that. And I had to explain to him, it's like, that's not the real world. You know, that person probably is renting that car. That person is only showing you that they're going to these restaurants because they're trying to impress you. It's probably not their real lifestyle. The kids are growing up today with such a really skewed idea of what reality and self-worth is, because they're getting it externally as opposed to developing it internally. It's being driven by what they see and not by what they're actually experiencing. And you're not experiencing it when you're on your phone or looking at a computer screen. But we know that because we remember life prior to these screens.
How hard is it to actually meet people? I'm like you. I have not been on any of these apps because I've been out of circulation, but I never had trouble meeting people when I wasn't out of circulation.
Look, I may be a radio host today, but back in the day, I was always the kid who had, quote unquote, the gift of gab. I could talk my way into some things, and I could talk my way out of some things. But part of that was actually using socialization skills, knowing how to talk to someone, knowing how to convince someone. Everybody's going to ask that girl, because I was a boy at the time, ask that girl for her number. But why is she going to pick me? Well, I'm going to come at her a little bit differently. You know, I may not comment on her physical shape. I may comment on her smile or ask her about what she likes. That was the whole game. It was about being able to impress a young lady and have her see me and talk to me. Now it's like, I don't know what they do. How does anyone stand out other than sending them a photo?
I don't know. Much like Tony, I've always been an awkward nerd. And so I don't think, there we go. He is awake. I don't think you got to be perfect. You know, make people laugh. They're not perfect either. It's really not that difficult to meet people.
It may not be if you actually did it for a portion of your life. I remember going to the nightclub. It's like, okay, guys, whoever has the most numbers comes back with the most numbers tonight. You know, they don't have to buy drinks afterward or something. You know, it was always a game. It was always a competition.
Wow, you're dealing in volume.
Tell them I'm wrong.
Oh man, that numbers game was real.
Okay.
Parking lot pimping, we called it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You just didn't want to be a sucker at the end of the night with like 2 or 3 numbers. Ugh.
Yeah.
Loser.
Impoverished. Yeah, of course.
But that's how we actually met young women, because you had to demonstrate that you could talk to them or that you could dance, because they felt if you could talk and you could dance, and you could probably do some other things. Self-confidence. I don't know. Look, I'm old school like that.
Don't say.
So I don't know what an AI girlfriend is going to do for the next generation, but I can understand why they're concerned.
It just cost you less. That's about it.
It's later with Mo Kelly, KFI AM 640. That's not necessarily true, because it's going to be a subscription charge every month. We're live everywhere in the iHeartRadio app.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
Last night I was talking to Marcia Collier, and we were talking about now that the holiday season is officially here, and we were going to be making all sorts of purchases, usually online, and having them delivered to our houses. Invariably, the porch pirates are going to be out there expecting our packages as well. And sure enough, they've already begun. Let me tell you about John Shin, a Lawndale resident. He was tracking his shipment of an expensive laptop, okay? It's a big deal. And I have been one to buy more than one computer online and have it delivered as opposed to going to a store. So I understand the concern and the worry. You want to be there when it arrives. You don't want it sitting on your porch near your door. You don't want that. You want to be right there for it. Well, he was tracking his shipment of an expensive laptop when he noticed it had been delivered. But he wasn't the only one following the package. When Shin went to check the front of his home near the intersection of Prairie and Manhattan Beach Boulevard, package was nowhere to be found. Shin said that he saw the UPS driver and followed him down the street to stop and ask him about the missing package. The driver said, well, some guy showed me his ID, quote unquote. Shin later found footage of the exchange. The video showed a stranger stopping the UPS driver as he stepped out of the truck with Shin's package. The man showed the driver something off his phone, possibly a fake ID, then is handed the delivery. That's happening more and more. In fact, the post office was delivering a package for me today, and I happened to be in my garage, and I opened my garage. So the postal carrier knew that I actually lived there and was able and willing to hand the package to me. But by and large, I hope they don't do that as a matter of course where someone just runs up and you just hand the package. Now, on the other hand, I'm quite sure the mailman, that's what I'll call him, the mailman wants to deliver, the UPS driver wants to deliver it to the front door. The guy can still steal it, but I guess he was trying to avoid showing up on the Ring device.
Yeah, but this is another level of shade because we think about all of the different ways people are using these stolen IDs or any of the leaked information. And for this individual to be able to shadow track an Amazon package and intercept it before its arrival, this is a new level of low where these criminals or these cyber criminals are utilizing this stolen ID information.
Yeah, it's another form of hacking. I mean, I'm quite sure if you can hack someone's email and track their packages, yeah, you know what they're buying, when it's going to show up, presumably. And it's not that hard to create a fake ID with someone else's name, which could pass a flash test where you're just flashing it at someone. You're not trying to get in a bar and have an actual bartender or a law enforcement officer examine it. You can pass the flash test and then you get the package. Look, anything of value is liable to be stolen. And people know now, especially criminals, know that there are expensive packages, valuable items, which are going to be showing up on people's doorsteps every single day through the end of the year. Every single day. And you have to assume that your neighborhood, your street, your house is a target. And Marcia Collier and I were talking about all the ways that you can try to best protect yourself by having your packages sent to like an Amazon box, or you yourself have to put in a code and get out your item. But that's not necessarily convenient for everyone. I know it's not convenient for me, especially when I'm working 22 miles away. Now, there's usually someone always at my house, but still, there's still gaps in that. There's no way to get around all of it. And all of us, as much as I like to be able to depend on online shopping, instead of physically going to a store and having to argue with people about whether it's okay to back my car into a parking space and fighting with other people in the line. I don't want to do all that. I'd rather just go click, 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 and my package is on the way, and it'll get there in 10 days or whatever amount of time. But then I also have to worry about, okay, I can see my front porch, which means that I get the opportunity to watch someone steal my package from my front porch. there's nothing that's foolproof, but this is where crime is headed, where they're getting more and more brazen. Have you had it happen to you yet, Mark?
No, and the day that I see somebody run off with like a book that I get off of eBay is the day that you have to bail me out for homicide.
Yeah, see, I think that's my line in the sand. If you're going to come up on my property and steal something off my property, and I have the opportunity to give chase, even though it's probably ill-advised,
to say the least,
it's ill-advised, I don't know if I will be able to resist that temptation, because unless they're getting in a car which is very close by, I got a chance. Because usually they're on foot. They're not going to drive right up to your house. Why? Because they don't want to expose their license plate.
And if you've never had anything stolen from you, you don't know how violating that feels.
Ooh.
And it's easy to mock it, and I want to mock it. But when you have things stolen, like I had a storage unit broken into, there's nothing more violating. It makes you want to curl up into a fetal position.
Well, Tuala will have the last word about storage unit being broken into.
Look, to this day, the individual who violated my storage unit, their parents, their children, any descendant, anyone who shares their same bloodline is cursed. I have put a curse on them, a hex on them, a pox on them, and I wish them nothing but hell.
I will pee on their graves with you.
Very quickly, Tuala, with your storage unit, there was never any video of the...
Now, the public storage unit over there on Lincoln, for some reason or other, the no cameras could catch anything.
Inside job.
That's what I said.
We have a Rahner report coming up next in just a moment.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
Pop culture Rahner report with Mark Rahner.
Now on Later with Mo Kelly, Mark talks about movies and TV, pontificates about pop culture. Rahner report with Mark Rahner. Mark Rahner right now. Mark Rahner right now. Mark Rahner right now.
Report with Mark Rahner.
KFI AM 640 is Later with Mo Kelly. It's that time in the show where Mark Rahner takes over with the Rahner report.
We all have stuff we do outside work here at KFI. Mo has his martial arts classes, and he also does hits on other media. Tuala does the Lord's work at a school. And I know what you're thinking, but no, I won't do porn. I haven't hit rock bottom yet. Maybe soon, but not yet. I'm a writer. I've written a ton of comic books, articles about movies and TV, op-eds. I've also written for video games. And this week, a really cool one's out that I wrote the dialogue for. It is called Nobody Wants to Die. I know it sounds like that awful last James Bond movie, but it's a future noir mystery cyberpunk thriller game. It is beautifully rendered. It gets into some fairly sick and unsettling territory, and I could not be prouder of this thing. Think Blade Runner in terms of visuals, but if you get to be a detective and you have some wondrous future tech for examining crime scenes and manipulating time at the crime scenes, and as you get further and further into this story in this dystopian future where the bodies are piling up, you have a dawning realization of where you stand amid all the corruption and cruelty and murder. You know, perfect for kids. Nobody Wants to Die is made by Critical Hit Games, a newish company, and it should be available however you play this stuff. On Steam, where it's got a 9 out of 10 so far, fingers crossed. On consoles, all of it, everywhere. Here's some of it. This is an early trailer from about 4 months ago that I wrote, and we start off looking down an urban canyon of tall buildings and neons swarming with flying cars, which are still somehow vintage looking.
They say time heals all wounds. But that's bull.
Beep.
I'll tell you what time does. Time reveals secrets. Secrets that enslave us. Secrets secrets that poison us. Secrets that rip us apart. Secrets I'm gonna drag into the light. Or they'll drag me to hell.
Now, that's Nobody Wants to Die, and the game looks absolutely stunning. And I've always loved noir movies. You know what those are. You've seen them. These hard-boiled detective movies that started in the 40s and 50s that had more cynical heroes, kind of anti-heroes coming out of World War II with all the disillusionment that entailed. These weren't guys who came home from the war and shouted, USA, USA. They were generally sarcastic, self-destructive, hit the bottle pretty hard. The stories often involve a femme fatale who's bad news, but still irresistible, like real life. Very little chasing tornadoes around in trucks as well, you should know. The Maltese Falcon with Humphrey Bogart. You've seen that. And we've talked about Monsieur Spade here not long ago, the Clive Owen series. That's really good. Out of the Past with Robert Mitchum. Lots of great newer ones too, or neo-noir, which they're called. Robert Altman's The Long Goodbye is one of my favorites. It's got Elliot Gould in it. It's really good. And if you haven't seen that one, you should. In Nobody Wants to Die, you play as a detective in New York in the year 2329 who's called back on the job to investigate an off-the-books case of mass murder of the city's elite. This detective has some issues, though. For instance, he's not in his first body anymore, and he's having trouble settling into his new body. In this future, you can transfer your mind, your consciousness to a new body when you wear out the old one, if you have the money. People who don't have the money, the have-nots, they do what they got to do, and it isn't always pretty. And again, I'm not talking about porn. The choices you make throughout this game affect the outcome. It's not a shooter, although there is some shooting. Very procedural, very visual, vibe-oriented, not the same old, same old. Just to be clear, the game's absolutely not for kids. Along with all the drinking and some fairly grisly stuff, there is a very generous amount of swearing, which was great fun writing, I'll tell you, by the way. There were many times when we were racking our brains trying to get the right phrasing for a line, and I'd ask, how about just an MFer here? Oh, yeah, that works. Perfect. Everybody wins. If we have time, I'll play a little bit more from the official launch trailer that's from this week. I've admitted here before, though, that self-promotion just makes my skin crawl, which can be a bit of a speed bump if you're working in the radio business. And I want you to know, also as a writer, I don't get one dime extra no matter how many or how few people buy this game. I have one payday when I finish my work. I'm only telling you about the game right now because I think it turned out to be something really special, and I think you're going to love it. You can see gameplay of Nobody Wants to Die on YouTube, along with reviews and all sorts of other stuff. And since radio is more of an oral medium, you kind of need to see this for yourself in a visual medium. I spent a few minutes looking up reviews last night. It's brand new this week, and my favorite was, surely someone wants to die. Hard to argue with that. Also, a user called Fart Night called the game a straight banger. That's good, right, Mo?
Yeah, that's positive.
You appreciate a straight banger, or
banger
perhaps less often in your later years here.
Yeah, banger is always positive unless it's preceded by gang in the civic sense, in the criminal sense.
Yeah, we're a little ahead on time, so let's just hear a little bit more of the trailer where I didn't have to beep out a swear word in my own voice.
Having a goal is better than inactivity. An alternative to focusing on the symptoms and the memories. I'm 120 years old, and I don't have any strength left to keep recalling the past.
You're a goddamn departmental legend.
Legend, huh?
More like cautionary tale.
I need access.
Do you think I don't know why the chief put you on restricted duty?
No doubt about it, this case smells worse than a 2-week-old corpse in a storm drain.
Can I ask you something personal? Do you believe in life after death? Well, apparently in the past, people used to ask stuff like that all the time.
Because the average lifespan was less than 100 years.
And now, can we believe in anything beyond this? What if you could choose the bank or death?
Now, the bank is the memory bank, and if you're too poor to afford a new body, that's where your consciousness goes, and it stays there until you get some money or something changes. It's an absolutely stunning game. Nobody wants to die. I hope you check it out. I don't make any extra money telling you about it. I'm just excited about it. It really turned out to be a special thing.
Sounded like Scarlett Johansson was doing that narration there.
I don't know who did the narration. I really wanted to do the voice of the detective because as we're writing these lines of dialogue, I'm actually performing them over Skype with these guys at the company in Poland, and I so wanted to do this, but the guy who did it sounds terrific.
How did you fall into this?
Oh, nepotism and corruption, of course.
Okay.
No, it's like a lot of games or comics or things like that. It's kind of who you know combined with what you've already done that you can show people. So I had to display, if you'll pardon me for sounding immodest about this, a somewhat encyclopedic knowledge of noir films, because when I was back in grad school, I was going to do my dissertation on existentialism and film noir. So I've seen a lot of the stuff. And it's kind of the way I write and talk. Anyway.
No, it is definitely how you talk.
So if you play this game or if you just watch the walkthrough on YouTube, you'll kind of hear my voice, even though it's not me doing the actual narration.
I'm very intrigued, and congratulations are in order, regardless of whether you get another dime or not.
Thank you very much. It's a ton of fun. The game is Nobody Wants to Die.
So why did you keep it under wraps for so long?
Well, I had to sign an NDA.
Okay, that answers the question.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, they would have made me homeless if I violated the NDA. I'm sure you understand how those work.
Oh, yeah.
But it also was kind of a stealth release. When I was looking up the reviews last night, I saw that people felt that it was just kind of dropped out of nowhere. There wasn't really any big build up to this. And I don't know if that's because the company is kind of a newer company or what, but I feel like it's making a big splash coming right out based on what I've seen so far. The reviews are terrific, and I hope it keeps going that way.
Well, many congratulations to you, and hopefully you'll get to voice it next time.
Yeah, for God's sake, what's a guy have to do? Who do I have to sleep with?
Well, don't ask that question because someone will give you an answer.
Oop, look at the time.
It's Later with Mo Kelly. We're live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app.
What the hell is going on? Well, we're about to tell you.
KFI
And KOST HD2.
Los Angeles, Orange County.
Live